part of, she would never do this to us, but also part of maybe this is all part of a plan.
The air inside Balmoral Castle was heavy with solemnity, its ancient halls cloaked in a silence that spoke more profoundly than words ever could. Prince William and Prince Harry, usually separated by continents and circumstances, stood side by side for once, not as representatives of the monarchy or symbols of royal protocol, but as sons. Sons whose world had, once again, been shaken to its foundation. It was Princess Anne, ever the pillar of strength within the family, who had summoned them both, her voice calm but resolute as she prepared to fulfill a responsibility neither brother had expected to face so soon. Before we start, smash the like and subscribe buttons for more updates. The news of King Charles III's ongoing battle with cancer had for weeks cast a long shadow across the royal family. While his public appearances were limited and his usual routines modified to accommodate treatment, the gravity of the situation had mostly remained confined to whispers and tightly closed doors. But now, as the king's condition subtly but unmistakably shifted, there was no more room for silence. Princess Anne, always closest to her brother in both loyalty and temperament, had taken it upon herself to deliver a message that bore not just gravity, but legacy, the king's final wish. It was not just a logistical revelation or a matter of succession. This was something more intimate, more heartfelt. As she spoke to William and Harry, her composure reflected decades of royal restraint, but her words carried the unmistakable tremor of emotion. The king had thought deeply, perhaps during long, quiet moments in his private quarters or while reflecting on a life of duty and sacrifice. And in those reflections, he had formed a final vision, one that encompassed not just the future of the monarchy, but the very fabric of his family. The moment the brothers heard the message, the weight of it seemed to settle on their shoulders like centuries of tradition, pressing down in a single breath. Prince William's eyes, usually so composed and focused, shimmered with unspoken grief. He understood more than anyone the implications of what his father had conveyed. As heir to the throne, every word mattered, not just in symbolism, but in practical consequence. This was more than a parting request. It was a roadmap forged in vulnerability, meant to unite what had fractured and strengthen what remained. Harry, standing beside his brother in that solemn room, was gripped by a different kind of emotion. The distance between him and the royal institution had not just been physical. Years of strain, public controversy, and emotional wounds had created a chasm that seemed at times too wide to bridge. But Princess Anne's words, shaped by the king's deepest reflections, weren't cloaked in expectation or judgment. They carried something gentler, a plea wrapped in dignity, that family must transcend division. That in the twilight of his reign and life, the king's final wish was for reconciliation. This revelation landed like a thunderclap in the hearts of both sons. It was clear that the king wasn't merely thinking about the continuation of the monarchy, or the duties that would fall upon William in the near future. He was thinking about legacy in its most human form, not in portraits, parades, or coronations, but in the relationships that defined him as a man, a father, and a brother. And in this moment, it became evident that his greatest hope was for unity, not ceremony. William, ever the embodiment of duty, felt the profound weight of dual obligations. He had to carry forward the public-facing legacy of his father, stepping ever closer to the role he was born to fulfill. But now, there was also a deeply personal charge, to hold together the pieces of a family that had grown apart. That request, or more precisely that wish, carried more emotional resonance than perhaps any royal edict or constitutional responsibility ever could. It was not a command, it was a father's quiet yearning, shared through a sister he trusted implicitly. Harry's reaction, though quieter and perhaps more conflicted, was no less emotional. For all the years he had spent building a new life beyond palace walls, there remained a tether, sometimes frayed, sometimes taut, that still bound him to the man who had raised him, and to the brother with whom he had shared a lifetime of triumphs and trials. The king's final wish didn't erase the past, but it made it impossible to ignore the future. A future in which Harry's place was not simply about titles or appearances, but about love, blood, and forgiveness. As Princess Anne delivered the message, she too bore the emotional strain. Though known for her stoicism, she was deeply aware of the magnitude of what she was communicating. This was not merely a relay of information, it was a sacred act of familial stewardship. Her voice didn't waver, but her presence radiated the gravity of a woman who understood what it meant to carry another's heart in her hands. She had been the king's confidant through every twist of his journey, from the youthful prince to the man who now faced the finitude of life with courage and grace. The room where this revelation unfolded seemed frozen in time, as if the very walls were absorbing the significance of the moment. For the first time in many years, William and Harry were united in their stillness, not as symbols of a divided institution, but as sons absorbing the vulnerability of a father who could no longer rely solely on the strength of public persona. And it was in that rare and sacred silence that the first seeds of something long missing were quietly planted. Understanding. The king's final wish wasn't just a sentimental gesture. It was a strategic, deeply human insight, a realization that no matter how strong an institution may appear, it is only as enduring as the bonds that hold its people together. Charles had come to see, perhaps more clearly than ever, that history judges monarchs not just by their accomplishments, but by their humanity. And if the monarchy was to remain relevant and resilient, it had to reflect not just stability, but healing. To William, this message clarified more than his responsibilities. It reframed them. His father was telling him that strength wasn't always about stoicism or adherence to tradition. Sometimes strength was about empathy, about bridging gaps rather than fortifying walls. As future king, this might be the most critical lesson of all, that leadership begins with compassion, not control. For Harry, the message held a mirror to his soul. Despite everything that had transpired, the interviews, the books, the distance, there remained a part of him that longed for belonging, for reconciliation. The king's wish peeled back layers of defensiveness and resentment, reminding him of a time before the divisions, before the world became so loud, a time when he and his brother were simply boys who adored their father. The implications of this moment reached far beyond the confines of the room. It wasn't just about a family finding its footing during a crisis. It was about the evolution of a monarchy that had too often relied on stoic silence in the face of emotional turmoil. The king's decision to share his final wish in such an intimate, personal way marked a quiet revolution in royal behavior. It was a decision that placed love above protocol, healing above posture. The emotional terrain of that conversation reshaped not only the bond between two estranged brothers, but also the internal narrative of a family often burdened by history. The very act of revealing a final wish through Princess Anne, a figure both respected and emotionally anchored, highlighted the importance of trust, of relational stewardship in moments of transition. The king had chosen her not merely as a messenger, but as a guardian of something far more delicate than state secrets, the emotional future of his family. Even as they stood digesting the implications, William and Harry were each aware that this moment marked a pivot, not a conclusion, not even necessarily a resolution, but a turning point. The days ahead would not be easy. The tensions and scars of the past would not vanish overnight. But now, there was something they hadn't had in years, a common cause, not one dictated by duty or PR, but one grounded in the quiet, profound desire of a father facing the end of his reign, and perhaps his life, with honesty and love. This wasn't about rewriting history or pretending pain hadn't existed. It was about looking forward through the lens of shared grief and mutual respect. The king's vulnerability had become a bridge. Fragile, yes, but also potentially transformative. If embraced, it could lead to a new chapter not just for the family, but for the monarchy as a whole. And so, as they left the room where Princess Anne had spoken, neither William nor Harry said much. Words in that moment felt too heavy, too clumsy, but the silence they shared was different from before. It wasn't the cold, distant silence of conflict. It was the contemplative quiet of two men standing at a crossroads, carrying a father's final wish in their hearts, and perhaps beginning to understand what it truly meant. Outside, the Scottish winds swept across the Balmoral estate, whispering through the ancient trees as if nature itself bore witness to what had transpired within. Somewhere nearby, the king rested, unaware that his deeply personal wish was already stirring echoes in the hearts of his sons. A wish that, if honored, might finally do what decades of ceremony and diplomacy could not: bring peace to the family and strength to the crown. If you liked this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on King Charles's final wish revealed by Princess Anne? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.